What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast with Cass, Chris, and Shad. What's going on, fellas?
Good, y'all.
What's good?
Been a crazy week in the NFL. Obviously, like we it seems like we always say. Obviously, we had Shadur Sanders make his appearance in the NFL, so we'll get into that a little bit. We obviously had a big game with Kansas City, as well as a game that everybody was kind of looking forward to over the past couple of weeks with the Detroit Lions and the Eagles. And then finally, we also had what was tabbed to be the game of the year. Between the Seahawks and the Rams. But, it was a good game, but probably didn't, hit exactly that in terms of a shootout and stuff like that, what people are typically looking for. But we did get a shootout in Atlanta, typical of what we've seen between, Bryce Young and Michael Penix. But, like I said, crazy week. Obviously, we had a big injury at the quarterback position as well, multiple quarterback injuries. And we also had Joe Burrow officially being a full participant in practice this week. A lot of places that we can go and start this off. But, what was some of you guys' biggest takeaways from the week? And then we can kind of get into everything from there.
I mean, like you said, Sean, like a couple of the bigger games we, discussed beforehand, waiting to see. Seems like the theme of the week for those games, defense. I mean, we talking about like Seahawks versus the Rams. You expecting some high flying action, some fireworks. We've seen a lot of defensive plays that game. Sam Darnold throwing 4 interceptions. The second half, the Rams only mustering up one touchdown. Well, one scoring drive basically, and couldn't do nothing else the rest of the half. The Seahawks, coming away with field goals and had a field goal at the end to win it. Obviously, it was a long field goal, so, it didn't work out for them. And same thing with Detroit Eagles. I mean, again, another game where you would expect, at least seeing how Detroit has played. Obviously, the Eagles been struggling offensively, but seeing how Detroit has been playing, you would have thought, another possible high-scoring, high-flying game. Again, another defensive juggernaut game, struggle. So, and even with the you might not expect it from them as far as the Broncos and the Chiefs, but again, another low scoring game by two teams, or at least the Broncos at this juncture, only having 2 losses. You again going against a divisional opponent, and the Chiefs, who obviously season on the line right now. That's my biggest takeaway this week: defense.
Yeah,
I gotta agree with that. Even the Bears-Vikings game. The defense is held up for the most part. Bears defense did get a little leaky in the fourth quarter. Of course, that was JJ time, Chris, right? But
9 times.
But the Bears were able to pull it out. Woo. Bears were able to win that game, and get to 7-3, which is huge for them before they get into like the real tough part of their schedule. We said the same thing last season with the Bears, and they dropped these games because I think last season as well, a lot of their divisional games was towards the end of their schedule. But then they went on that bad losing streak, and it just fell apart. This year is pretty much the complete opposite. They're 7-3. They still got a lot of divisional, a lot of harder games left, but they have a little bit of lead room a little leg to stand on now. So I got to give credit where credit is due. That's a first-time head coach, Ben Johnson, that was sought after, heavily, for a few years now. And to come in your first year and turn that team around and get to 7-3 where you are right now is impressive. Now, you got to admit it. Now, Caleb hasn't been the best. Obviously, even this game on Sunday, he wasn't one of his best games. But they keep finding ways to win. And we've been giving credit to teams like that. We gave credit, a couple seasons, last season, to Kevin O'Connell, which it didn't end well.
We said Sam Darnold was hooping, though.
Sam Darnold was hooping, but it was still, they weren't like blowing people out every game, too. They were finding ways to win. And a lot of it was coaching. Sam Darnold was good. But even, a couple seasons ago with Kevin O'Connell, 2 seasons, like the season before Kirk Cousins got injured, that was another season where they found a lot of ways to win. So you got his good credit there. And then, of course, Bucs Bills, man. That was... You talk about a shootout. That one they were haymakers. And again, this wasn't the best, game from Baker Mayfield. It didn't start off as one of Josh Allen's best games at all. And then it turned into one of his masterpieces, which this is exactly why he's the MVP. For times like this, I think that game was one of the. It was fun watching that game. Up until late in the fourth quarter, you still had the Bills pretty much had the game. Yeah, they had the control of the game, but it was anybody's game, honestly. In that fourth quarter, it can go either way, especially with how turnover prone Josh was early in the game. So, but 317 yards passing, 6 total touchdowns. That's just he's a beast, man. It's so tough to do anything with that. But your Chargers, Chris, Justin Herbert, what's up?
81.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, very tough game for the Chargers. Obviously, it seems like whatever Jacksonville has over them is continued. Obviously, dating back to their playoff in the wild card when Jacksonville came back against the Chargers. But overall, I mean, kind of an ugly game between both of them. Where it's not like Jacksonville really just like did anything spectacular. It was just just a super ugly game, and you were kind of seeing the wheels fall off on the Chargers a little bit as obviously with some of the injuries, obviously on the offensive line, which has kind of been a question mark that has been there. It seems like forever since Justin Herbert's been there. Now, with that being said, kind of like some of the comments that have been, obviously Chris made some comments about Justin Herbert early on in the season or before the season started, but he, there is a factor of like, hey, your offensive line is hurting, but there's also like 81 yards is unacceptable.
Yes.
So it kind of goes both ways, and understandable. Like there's a way how a game flows and a game goes and stuff like that. But with that being said, ultimately the quarterback position when you get to a point where you're starting to say, hey, the quarterback needs XYZ, 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 and XYZ, like, and I'm not Justin Herbert obviously is the guy, but when we start saying stuff like that, like you got to really start reevaluating things. And so Justin Herbert definitely in the Chargers, they definitely have to figure that out. Obviously, it was great to see Brock Purdy come back. There was a lot of questions, even though I didn't think that the questions were definitely warranted, given Mac Jones's play. He did have some great games, but he also had some games where it was like, it is Mac Jones. Let me not get too hard on Mac Jones here because we'll get into that in just a second here. But Mac Jones, it was good to see Brock Purdy come back, and obviously they went crazy. 41 points against the Cardinals, who have shown to be a really good defense, and they still got a decent game out of Jacoby Brissett, obviously breaking the pass completion record this past week as well. But kind of to Chris's point, like you said, like defense was kind of the hallmark of the week, and even the Eagles, obviously I talked about them last week and their quarterback and how I felt about him. But one thing that we can say to his credit is number one, and this is something that I wish that I said last week as well in conjunction with what I was saying about him. But one thing that he does that I think that, and I saw this tweet and I bookmarked it and everything and meant to say it last week, but comparing Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts is if we want to even whatever criticisms we have about Jalen Hurts, one thing that is for sure is Jalen Hurts has understood probably what a lot of people said about Kansas City last year is how to win, how to be a game manager. And I think that's something that's a valuable, that's super valuable that not all quarterbacks have, where it's like, look, I might not be able to do XYZ. I might not be able to, put up 400 yards or 300 yards every game. But one thing I will not do is I'm not going to turn the ball over to hurt my team, especially in a game that's in 16-19 where the other team is doing this dumbass shit, being super aggressive, trying to go for every fourth down under the sun.
It's crazy.
The difference between the difference between the game was, look, I fumbled early in the game, and from there maybe I was a bit conservative that could draw some criticism, but I didn't do anything to lose this game for us, and ultimately we won, and ultimately we've beaten damn near every good team that you could possibly think of in the fucking league. And to even furthermore, to Chris's point, we typically see the Eagles, whatever questions we do have about them offensively, they typically do show up against the good teams, which that goes more to back to the defensive point where, their defense is starting to show up more and more. Obviously we had a couple questions, not a whole lot, but a couple questions about them early on in the season, especially with Adoree Jackson out there. But, he's hooping, he's playing as well. Obviously, Quinyon is playing well. Jalen Phillips coming over mid-season has been excellent, over 2 games. And, pie in people's faces for everybody that said a third-round pick was, too much. Also, this week, there's a couple things that we saw that were a little bit interesting in that Miami game, being the last one, being the last international game of the year. I'm not going to put too much on that one just because it is an international game and the international games is weird. But, for Mike McDaniel, a guy that I think is going to keep his job, how that game went can't continue to happen because if you're playing a better team, even though Marcus Mariota was solid, like you're playing against a better quarterback, those are the type of games that you probably will lose. And seeing that Miami is a team that consistently under Mike McDaniel has struggled against some of those better teams, that is something that you wish that you would, not see, as much. But obviously, it's better to have that in a win than it is in a loss. And they have won a few games over the past few weeks, so they're kind of on an upward trajectory. But with that being said, we also saw an ugly game from Lamar. So I do want to get into that game a little bit, not specifically about Lamar, but obviously we saw the debut of Shadur Sanders, which is going to be a lot of conversation this week, as he will be the starter for the Browns now that Dylan Gabriel is in concussion protocol. What do you guys? I'm not going to ask about last game because there's a lot of dumbass commentary about it in terms of him getting first team snaps and all that, and how he played. What do you guys think is a realistic expectation for him as a starter, or what would you like to see from him, whether he keeps the starting position moving forward or not? What would you guys like to see from him in his first start ever as a Cleveland?
I mean, for me, it's just I guess just being able to move the ball consistently. And when I say move the ball, it doesn't have to be, I'm not looking for no 10, 12 play, scoring touchdown drives or whatnot. But, being able to convert first downs throughout the game. The problem is it's unfair for him because at this point, it doesn't matter what he do. If he goes out there and have a bad game, which he's a fifth round rookie. You're expected to have bad games. You was picked in the 5th round. In general, if you pick somebody in the 5th round, you don't expect him to be dominant like a Tom Brady. He wasn't dominant coming straight in when he got his opportunity to play. But it's just unfair that everybody is putting that on him, especially even the people who in his corner. I really think you're doing him a disservice because now you're highlighting it to everybody else. Like, okay, you're saying he's this. Oh, he just missed that throw. He's bad. He just missed that throw. It's just like it's unfair for me for him. But as far as my thought on it, like they're playing a team. Who they play this week?
Raiders.
So that's a get right game if you ask me. But I mean, I would like to see some consistency as far as moving the ball. Again, I'm not saying he need to win the game. He just need to, I guess, play a game where he's not. It doesn't look like he's pressing, like he's trying to force a big play. Like I don't want him, scrambling around 10 seconds trying to chuck the ball. So like it's okay. It's okay if you throw it out of bounds incomplete. It's cool. It's fine. Just keep the offense. Try to keep it rolling. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want to see him press at all.
I like that. That main point. You can't take these bad sacks like you did. He took a damn near 20-yard sack, on one of those plays, just backing up. Where you got so far back you couldn't even trust yourself to make it to the line of scrimmage to throw it away. That's how that type of stuff can't happen. But I'm mainly looking for his teammates, how they step up. You're going to need the offensive line to play better. You're going to need Quinshon Judkins to have a great game. You're going to need these receivers to show something. Jerry Jeudy, you're the guy there. You got to show something. You got the 2 tight ends and Fannin and David. You got to show something. You got to step up for your guy. Like you said, Chris, he's a 5th round pick. I'm truly not expecting too much. And the offense that you haven't seen much from Dylan Gabriel when he played. Let's be honest. So in this one, it's mainly about how his team step up, how his team responds, and how hard they play. That would show me a little bit more if he's the guy or not. Just how everybody else starts playing around him. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, mainly than how he necessarily plays.
And there's a lot of guys that have been saying, it has been assumed that a lot of the guys for the Browns are kind of rooting for Shadur as well. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of them are big fans of Dion, and that plays a part of it as well. And I'm sure they're also looking like, he's going through this media storm as a rookie, as a guy that's not even playing. That we really shouldn't even be talking about him. Other shows really shouldn't even be talking about him. No disrespect to him, but that's just kind of what it is when you are, Deion Sanders or a son of a legend. So I do, one of the main thing that I want to see, kind of like what Chris said, obviously not pressing, but the ability to keep the offense on schedule. We're not expecting you to go out there and be a superstar, not expecting you to go out there and put up 40 points, but being able to keep the offense on schedule, not having, multiple sack games, because at this point, even back to preseason, that is something that we've seen multiple times, and something that people pre him even being drafted, that was something that a lot of people had questions about. So, showing that if everybody's been talking about how you're not ready, that is a form of improvement, at least from the taking the sacks, keeping the offense on schedule, that we could see, that hopefully we could expect to see. So that is one thing that I like to see. I don't know if he'll get a win. The team is brutal, to say the least, and just in terms of they've got a lot of pieces, especially on defense. I mean, the defense is just excellent top to bottom, but offensively, it's a lot of like makeshift. Like, we threw in, Jerry Jeudy, we threw in Isaiah Bond. Cedric Tillman hasn't really, done exactly what everybody thinks he could possibly do. We bring in Fannin Jr., like Cass mentioned, who's not necessarily your traditional tight end. That we've kind of, he's been really good. So not to say that he hasn't been at all, but like it just seems like it's a lot of like some of these other teams when they put together receiver rooms, or just receiving options, like there's body types that are different, there's styles that are different. This seems just like hey, we're just throwing everything at the wall. We knew we were fucked at the quarterback position regardless, so like we got these multiple first round picks next year, we'll just figure it out. Just keeping the offense on schedule, having a viable game, this whatever 4-16, 5-16, whatever he was. I understand it was the Ravens defense, and we do think that they're improving, but like it can't be that. It can't be that. Like having a above 60% completion, especially for Shadur Sanders, who is a guy that wasn't looked at as like a big arm quarterback. He was more looked at as a precision type and accuracy or inaccurate type quarterback. We got to see that, being in the 60% range, maybe even the 70% range. But if you are in that 70%, you can't be like 70% and everything is at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage. Like we got there. What that was a good thing that we saw from him was he's throwing the ball downfield. Let's see more of that, but let's get some completions out of it. So we'd like to see that from Shadur Sanders. But sticking in the quarterbacks, obviously one of the biggest games of the week was Denver versus Kansas City. What do you guys think? I don't even know where to start, because it's just that game was, obviously it was a defensive game like you mentioned, but we saw some misses. It was another game that we've seen from Patrick Mahomes that wasn't necessarily like, Patrick Mahomes. And Bo Nix was a game that we saw where he kind of, stepped up to the plate. So what was you guys' thoughts on that one?
Man, changing the guard, man. I mean, it don't look good. It just doesn't look good, and you can't really pinpoint. But at the beginning of the year, the whole idea was, once Worthy come back, once Rashee Rice come back, this offense is gonna pop. This is what they've been missing. But even with what you said, Shy, you said that like I want to say you said it either earlier this year or sometime last year, but you even said to yourself like, I mean, we're just assuming that Rashee Rice is just the end all be all to change whatever's going on in offense, and it really ain't been that for real. And this, I mean, we gonna look at these games when we choose them. But this their last chance. This their last chance. This their last chance to right the ship. I'm just putting it out there. They lose this game, it's over. They ain't making playoff. That's my personal opinion. So tough, but I mean, there's some got to give with that. But you go ahead, Cam.
I mean, it's just weird to see. You know what I mean? I did pick Denver to win this game. I didn't think it would kind of look like this. I didn't think Bo would throw for almost 300. But even with that, it wasn't. Let me not talk bad about Bo. I'll stick on Pat though. If Travis Kelce is your leading receiver in 2025, Travis Kelce had a good game now.
And he's been playing well.
I gotta give him credit, but that's not how this offense needs to function at this point at all. And I think that's where, like, I understand that you want to take your shots to a couple shots a game to Tyquan Thornton, Xavier Worthy. A lot of questions with him and his fit there and their plan there for him that we have to see kind of fruition. Like even Rashee Rice, he had a lot of targets, actually 6 catches, but it wasn't too much downfield. I feel like there's too many of the same receiver on this offense a little bit. Because you got Thornton, you got Hollywood Brown, you got Worthy, that you're all treating as your speed, that you want necessarily. They haven't sent Worthy too much downfield that you want, though, as your deep threat. And I feel like they could use a different type of receiver. And that's why, like, last year I was a little bit more excited when they got D-Hop, and he didn't have the biggest impact, but that type of receiver I still feel like is not Rashee Rice right now. So I think it's just the overall look of the offense. Just it looked better last season with less that when you had less. So I mean, they got to figure it out. Still, the run game got going just a little bit this game. Still, Patrick Mahomes throwing for 45 times is way too much against the Denver Broncos defense that wants you to do that. You know what I mean? And he should have had another turnover. He should have had another turnover on top of what he had. So I think the Chiefs might be cooked right now, but they got to redo how they want to do this receiver room, in my opinion.
And they got to redo a lot of things in terms of, just stylistically how they run. Andy Reid, maybe that is, I don't know if that's his full name, but Andy Reid. Andy, he's never necessarily been a guy that's had this like pristine run game until LaShawn McCoy. And even then he kind of caught the very early on. Like Brian Westbrook was a great running back, but Brian Westbrook wasn't
nothing but
he wasn't the guy that was exactly. He wasn't just going for 100 yards on the ground every game. So like there has to be some development of the run game that's outside of just trying to manufacture runs with Rashard Smith doing the screen game and in the past it's been Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the Chiefs and stuff like that.
Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, Jerick McKinnon, which, he was excellent for them as well, but shout out Jordan Southern. But, but with that being said, obviously Kareem Hunt's the starter right now with Pacheco being out, and Pacheco has practiced today. So it'll remain to be seen if that run offense evolves a little bit. But in my opinion, they do need to help out Pat a little bit more on that front. And that's saying something considering their offense is still top 3, 4, 5 in terms of efficiency in terms of offense, but they're not necessarily putting up the points like we expect them to, and they're definitely not that high flying offense like we expected, or I would say but like people expected with Rashee Rice coming back, with Xavier Worthy coming back, and and then to Cass's point, it kind of goes back to just my point about the Browns, where it's like teams have built around these different body types where they complement each other, and now you're looking at it where everybody is kind of redundant. Like you said, Tyquan Thornton, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. They've been using Xavier. They tried to use Xavier Worthy kind of like the gadget guy. Now, when Rashee Rice came back, they tried to like switch it to maybe he's a little bit more downfield, which maybe Patrick hasn't necessarily been great with that recently. But maybe that's just not Xavier Worthy's game in the pros either. So that is something that they kind of had to figure out. But also, and we could talk about him in just a second here, but we talked a lot about Keon Coleman with the Buffalo Bills. We got to start talking about Xavier Worthy. Is like he was a first-round pick, and whereas Keon Coleman was a second-round pick. Xavier Worthy hasn't started to show. Like, look, it's starting to look a lot like when they picked Clyde Edwards-Helaire as opposed to Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor becomes this all-pro running back, while Clyde Edwards-Helaire was solid, for a few years. Now you're looking at it. There was another guy that they could have gotten in Lad McConkey, who's looking like a really, really good receiver. Not this past week, withstanding just that whole team, but there's a lot of talk about Keon Coleman and Xavier Worthy because of the trade between the two teams, and then also obviously the Chiefs and Bills are kind of tied to each other. But when you let that guy go to a division opponent as well, who has also beaten you this year, who could also possibly keep you out of the playoffs later in the season, that has to be a conversation that people need to start having a little bit more, in my opinion. But a great win by Denver. Obviously, like you mentioned, possibly a change of the guard, and Sean Payton's talking big shit.
He is.
And for the questions that's been had about Bo Nix, like Sean's still talking big shit. For Sean Payton to talk shit at halftime of the game, like, look, this team is. We feel really good about this team. We feel really good about it, where we're at in this game, because we feel like this team's not a second half team. That says a lot, and that's not a small comment. Like, to say a 3-time champion is not a second half team, a team that just was in the Super Bowl, was the AFC representative, has been dominating your division. So that is something to continue to watch as things kind of progress and move forward. And we'll see, if Kansas City is able to, get a win this week and kind of get on a roll. We'll see later on down the line when Denver and Kansas City play again, how that ends up coming back up, because that is, if they are still, in the hunt, that is going to be a big, big, big topic of discussion. Those comments, and then obviously his comments post game, and they're no longer the dominant team. XYZ. So, Kansas City's got a lot of questions, and it's been kind of a weird season where there's been some teams that have, maybe they're kind of playing better than they were last year, but obviously the record's notwithstanding, where last year they were undefeated most of the season, and then now they're 500, looking at possibly missing the playoffs. But obviously we have some other quarterback news this week, starting off with Justin Fields has officially been benched. Something that we kind of expected, probably for the past few weeks, but didn't happen, probably due to, some injuries with Tyrod Taylor. But given this past week on Thursday Night Football, obviously going against the division rivals, the New England Patriots, do you guys support that move, or do you guys think that they should have stuck with Justin Fields?
I mean, it doesn't matter, because you're not gonna come into next season and say Tyrod Taylor's your starter. At least I don't think you are. My only thing is, it's an indictment on you because of how you acted this offseason. You as an Aaron Glenn, coming in, basically telling Aaron Rodgers, like, hey, you're not about to hamstrung this franchise. Basically dissing him on his way out and saying, I'm going with him. I'm going with Justin Fields. And I mean, even last week, like, if better, a little better, just a little better quarterback play. They was in that game, in my opinion. Their defense played pretty well, pretty solid in general, and they just couldn't get nothing done. I mean, we talked about it before, but like, this your third team. I mean, you might be a backup somewhere else, but sucks for him. But as far as Aaron Glenn, I mean, I guess this is just a way for you to show, like, hey, I can run a team if I have some good quarterback play. So I guess that's what he's going for, possibly. But I mean, other than that, you just fucking up your draft pick if you keep winning, or if you try
2 first-round picks. They got 2 first-round picks.
Well, that's true. So, okay. That's true. So I mean, I guess that helps a little better. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter at this point for them. I mean,
yeah, I'm with you on that. It should not matter. I think for now, the benching of Justin Fields is not too much about him, and I think it's more about their office coordinator, Tanner Engstrand and seeing how he functions with a different type of quarterback and how that offense, because you got to make decisions this offseason, Aaron Glenn. If you're going to go out and use one of these first round picks or trade or whatever, get a new quarterback in there, you got to know exactly what kind of offensive system that you need, that you want to have. And we've seen all season that Justin Fields, when he's out there, you don't know what this what this offense really could be like. It's just totally different. It doesn't function like an NFL offense at all. So I think it's more about that. I know they paid him, the 2-year $40 million, the $30 million guarantee. It is what it is. I truly think though they just want to see. They want to see what this offensive coordinator can handle and what type of quarterback they need to go out and get this offseason. I think that's more of it than actual Justin Fields. Because at this point, Chris, it don't matter. You can play Justin Fields for the rest of the season. It is what it is. But you got to start looking towards the future, and I think that's what they're kind of gearing up towards by playing Tyrod Taylor. So we'll see.
And I do think that Tanner's done a really good job considering, like especially for him to for them to consistently still be a really good running team and still get be good with Justin Fields running as well, like without having any semblance of a passing attack. It is definitely a commendable job. But to your point, he definitely, we need to see what it looks like passing. We do need to see what the passing concepts look like. We do need to see, like, obviously there's some stuff on tape, but if your quarterback's not taking advantage of it, like how much of it is that, it's not foolproof. So on top of that, to Chris's point, he could have gotten a little bit of help from a couple receivers this past week.
Your boy,
my guy, my guy had a little bit of struggles, but I do think that ultimately that's more so what they're looking for in terms of like evaluating everything. Like we want to see how Mason Taylor looks. We want to see how AD Mitchell looks, which AD Mitchell did look good in terms of everything else but catching the passes.
Separation, route running, all of that.
Everything looks great. So we do want to see what he looks like. John Mechie, who's, been on multiple teams now, we do want to see what he looks like now that he, if we want to say that he's now getting an opportunity. So, we want to see those guys. And then obviously, it looks like since they didn't trade, the running back, it looks like maybe they're going to pay Breece Hall. So maybe we need to see what he starts to look like with a competent, passing attack and how he can help in the passing game and stuff like that. So, I think maybe, obviously the injury with Tyrod Taylor kind of hurt it a little bit. But this is probably something that we should have saw from the jump or a little earlier. I don't know what they saw in training camp. And I'm not trying to hate on Justin Fields. I'm not a Justin Fields fan, so I will put that, I've said that multiple times in terms of his play on the field. I am a Justin Fields fan in terms of everything else. But he's an Atlanta boy. I root for him. Wanted him to be the Georgia starting quarterback. So I'm truly not hating. So I'm just saying it is, it is what it is at this point. Like that, what he's shown us has been, when you get benched for Russell Wilson, I'm sorry, that is as much of an answer about who you are as there is at the quarterback position. It is something that they gotta start seeing. I'm interested to see how if they do start winning more games, what that starts looking like for them, because it does seem like even though they lost this past game, it does seem like, not to say that the guys that left, like Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner, obviously those are two primetime players for their team that left. And I'm not saying that those were like guys that were locker room malcontents or anything like that, but it does seem like now that there's been a little bit of clarity without the trade deadline being there has been some energy there with the Jets. We'll see if Aaron Glenn is able to keep that. One thing, I'm not a big fan of how he's been handling everything in terms of the media and stuff like that. It seems like this week he didn't do the silly, we're not going to name the quarterback or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's a Justin Fields thing, maybe, wanting to protect him or what. I think that he, if he's not going to do himself favors by keeping grace in the media, I think he needs to do so by showing progress on the field. So I do think that this is a good opportunity, obviously, for Tyrod Taylor. He's had a very interesting career where, he has taken a little bit of advantage of his chances, but he's also had, Baker Mayfield. He ends up getting hurt and Baker comes in and becomes Rookie of the Year. The Justin Herbert situation where he got his lung punctured or whatever the case may be pregame. Justin Herbert takes off and goes from there. And then with his opportunity with the Bills, takes him to the playoffs, takes him to like a 9-win team. And then you have Josh Allen come in. He has had some tough go at it, but this is another opportunity for him to kind of, even if they do bring a quarterback in, you solidify a position maybe next year to whether it's there or with another organization,
like Atlanta,
have that opportunity to be a starter. But I mean, that gives us a great segue into Atlanta. Obviously, a very tough loss. Going into overtime, another overtime loss to Bryce Young, another big time Bryce Young game in Atlanta. But obviously, the story of the week is not Bryce Young. It is that Michael Penix has officially is out for the season with a torn ACL. Not going to do the semantics. It's torn. He needs full reconstruction surgery. So it's a very tough situation. But we'll start with Cass. Obviously, it's his team. So what were you guys' thoughts on it? And we can kind of take it from there.
Very tough situation. This franchise has been very cagey with injuries. So when they usually don't place guys on IR until Saturday before the game. So when he immediately went to IR, you kind of knew, that it was a bad. Look, there's a lot I could say. I'm not gonna lie, Chris. There's a lot I could say, but I will start with Terry Fontenot, who was on Shaw's hot seat. I mentioned that as well last week. The two worst things that you can happen when you make a bold move, like you did with paying Kirk, and then drafted Mike. It's two things. That's two terrible things that could happen. Either Kirk gets hurt or plays like trash, which happened, and Mike gets hurt or play like trash, and that happened as well in less than 2 seasons. So your plan or lack of plan, your plans merged together is how I phrased it. Last season, I know Shah said lack of plan blew up in your face in less than 2 seasons. Immediately, that's a fireable offense, in my opinion. Now we'll see how they move forward with everything. It is tough for Mike. I feel for Mike. Y'all know how I feel about Mike. But at the same time, the narrative coming into the draft was about your knees being made of glass and your first full season starting.
Like I said, turkey meat.
In your first full season of starting, you tear your ACL in your good knee. This shit is laughable at this point. It's a very tough look for that franchise, for our franchise.
He said that franchise. He's sick of them.
Everybody is though, but I will tell you this: there's been a lot of back and forth about like whether or not Mike should still get a chance, in the future and all that, or you completely or tear it down to the studs. A lot of people are getting on board to the thing of you should tear the shit all down, tear it up. Is bad bones, Chris. It's bad bones in this franchise, and that's where I'm leaning at too. If you look at it, for Mike's best interest, Michael Penix's best interest is for Raheem to stay on. If he wants a true shot next year to try to show faith, play good, Raheem has to be your head coach. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, for him. So at that point, you're a backup. Your backup plan. Your plan probably C at this point. You have to treat it in the same way the Browns have treated Deshaun Watson. He's on your team, but that's not what you're planning for. You want to plan, and whether that's in the draft, whether that's bringing vets or whatever, that's what you got to pivot to at this point. It's sad to say, and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made for that franchise going forward. It does suck. It does suck. And it's in a game where it was actually one of his best games that he was playing. He had a great half. Of course, he did spray a couple balls, but that's what you're gonna get with Mike. But you still led 3 straight, scoring drives against that defense. And then your first drive out of halftime, that happens. It is what it is what we've been saying in Falcons land.
What say you, Chris?
I mean, yeah, it's tough. I guess my thought process on it is I just don't see. Only reason why I'm saying I don't see them just tearing it all up is because you had to come into the draft knowing that his knees are made of glass. Like you had to have a contingency plan in your mind that it's a good chance he might tear his ACL. Now again, you just said good knee, but with all the injury, it wasn't like it was a one-time thing. With all the injury that he done had, it's like you had to know that and to spend a first round pick, a premium pick at that in the first round was it pick 6, 7, 8? I just think in my mind that I don't see them just hanging it up.
Oh, never do no 6, 7 shit on this podcast again. We not starting that. Nah, I know you weren't trying to do it.
I think I was thinking of
Honestly,
Drake London and Bijan, because they were like
they were they were all
They were
they were all 8.
Cal was
all
4,
eight.
and then it was 8,
Kyle
8, 8.
was
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was somewhere around there, but
And I'm with you on that, Chris. I'm with you on that. But if you do get a new regime in here, that's not your guy.
Okay,
And we've been
I
talking
agree
about
with
that.
I
You know what I
agree with
mean?
that. I do
So
agree
at
with
that
that.
point, you have to treat him as the backup plan. That's why I say his only shot if Raheem stays on.
Mhm.
If not, you might get it because you don't have many paths to get honestly, you don't have many paths to get a good quarterback this offseason. Unless you get lucky. You can go out and get a vet, you can try to trade, but you shouldn't be trading assets, that you really don't have to try and go out and get a Kyler Murray or whoever.
Mhm.
Trevor Lawrence that's been on talk too. So you don't have the assets to go and do something like that. So and then the vets that are out there, who are you looking at? Daniel Jones is going to get signed back, so he's off. And then you're looking at Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Jacoby Brissett, Zach Wilson.
Mhm.
I know you're going to talk about Max, so I'll say that, but I don't even know if you should trade assets for that. So I'm saying it's not really good options. So I think he's going to get a shot. But if you want a good shot, I think Raheem has to be it next
That's
season.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it was a super tough situation, and I said it wasn't a plan because this is kind of what it looks like when you're trying to frame conviction, when you're trying to frame desperation as conviction. And in my opinion, I felt like they were trying to merge, like we said, like they're trying to merge two different time frames with Raheem being a new coach coming in, like a retread coach coming in, but also with the GM being there a couple years before and already failing 3 times at quarterback. That should have been, a little bit more consideration. And then even the fact that they, obviously they're trying to say that he was a part of the head coaching, decision with Raheem Morris. But, if we really think back to when the Falcons were going through that, there was a lot of talk that he had no power. So in terms of Terry Fontenot, so it was just it was always a weird situation, and it never made sense because Michael Penix is also an older quarterback. And now we're at a position. If the Falcons got their way, Michael Penix was not going to start a single game until he was 26 or 20, until he was 27 years old, ultimately. And now you're at a position where you have Kirk Cousins, and he got hurt, or whatever the case may be. And now the quarterback is hurt, so you can't. Last year, in my opinion, he doesn't. Whatever they talked about last year that he needed to get better at, it does not look like he got better at anything. He looks like the same quarterback from last year. So now this was a big offseason for him because he needed to work on footwork. He needed to work on, taking those shots across the middle. He needed to work on, obviously, accuracy, whatever the case may be. But now he's losing that opportunity because he's not going to be in training camp. He's not going to be in mini camp. He's not going to be able to work with his quarterback coaches because he's going to be focusing on rehab. And then on top of that, you have to worry about what does his confidence look like, because he was already a guy that looked like he was shaky in the pocket when it came to anything dealing with pressure. And this was this was a team that has a top 5 pass protection offense, like in terms of their offensive line, at least in terms of what the metrics, PFF, ESPN, all blah, blah, blah. Eye test might not look like that all the time, but I'm not going to say, but with that being said, because, they say the Colts aren't that great of an offensive line, and I disagree, but hey, that is what it is. But with that being said, there was always like it was very, very tight for how this was going to work out, because if Kirk Cousins was going to be successful, Kirk Cousins had to be successful for a couple years, and then whenever Mike started, you had to have him take off because you're in a year where you had to decide on his fifth. If the plan worked out, you were going to have to be in a year where you had to basically decide on his fifth year option after a year or maybe not even a year of playing. So it was always tough, which is why a guy like JJ McCarthy, who was made more sense because JJ McCarthy was 20 compared to being 24, 25 coming in. And now, you know, it's a very tough situation. And ultimate, and then you couple that with, you double down with more desperation on James Pierce and trading the future first round pick. And, this is not a James Pierce like hate thing. I'm not saying that James Pierce is a bad player, but you short-sighted where you're like, we need to fix this pass rush that didn't need to be fixed. The Falcons had the best or the most amount of sacks last year once Raheem started taking over. Like, it wasn't something that needed to be 2 first-round picks this year. And it's just short-sighted to the point now. The Michael Penix injury probably doesn't hurt as bad if you have a first-round pick that is in the top 10 and you're like, all right, well, even if we do like Mike, we can still draft a Fernando Mendoza or a Dante Moore or a Ty Simpson. And now these guys, these 2 young guys get to compete, and whatever happens, maybe we can trade Mike to Minnesota, or we can, leave these young guys, or, let it play out the way it is for a year, and then we could figure it out the year after. But it's just a very tough situation. And, now, I say it's a very tough situation. It's a very tough situation today. We are talking a lot of doom and gloom, and obviously, when you're looking at quarterbacks and stuff like that, like Cass mentioned, your Jacoby Brissett's or Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I keep flicking my Anthony Richardson jersey. You got these guys, Mac Jones, whoever the case may be. Maybe it's not all doom and gloom because we have seen the Sam Darnolds, the Daniel Jones, the Baker Mayfield. What ultimately happens now is you have to nail everything moving forward. You can't just nail you have to nail the who's going to be the leader of the franchise, and it can't be I know a lot of Falcons fans have been talking Matt LaFleur. No more Kyle Shanahan guys, no more Dan Quinn guys. It needs to be something different because
get out that tree.
It's been this for 10 years. It's 10 plus years. It's time to switch it up. It's time to figure out something new, even if it doesn't go the right way initially. You got to break away from it completely right now because that's not what's working right now, and that's obviously not what's been working for almost a decade. So they got to figure that out. I don't know if it's going to be Raheem. I do like Raheem as a guy. Unfortunately, when you're losing everything,
it's tough, boy. You on a 5-game losing streak.
When you're losing, everything sounds like nonsense. And then when you're up there keying and shucking and jiving, I keep saying that because I can't figure out another term for Raheem Morris. But when you're out there doing that, it's going to lead to a lot of frustration from the fan base and whatnot. And then obviously, people are going to keep going back to what things looked like when you were the interim before. It's just a tough situation, but a tough situation doesn't have to be forever. And so on the bright side of things, next
something
year
will happen.
Something will change. Yeah, something will happen. I keep thinking the Anthony Richardson jersey last year, and I have made a lot of comparisons between the Colts and the Falcons over the past year. It was doom and gloom for the Colts last year. And right now they're the number 1 seed, or they're tied technically for the number 1 seed in the division. I mean, in the conference. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all doom and gloom. Chris's team is also a testament. There was a couple years ago, or a few years ago, it was, damn, we're trading our superstar quarterback that is going to have this huge dead money, blah, blah, blah. We bring in a 2nd-round quarterback that people think can't necessarily throw. We bench him in the last game of the season to tank for a better draft pick. Like, it all looks ugly. He has a decent season as a rookie or a second-year player, I guess, and then all of a sudden we trade for A.J. Brown and it fucking takes off. Like, it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Look at the Patriots. Like, last year looked one way. Now everybody's saying they're Super Bowl contenders. So it's a lot of things that can change, but everything, it's time to stop taking short-sighted decisions. Stop acting like you're sorry, Cass. You're not a contender. you're not close. Like, unfortunately, and I'm saying that as a Colts fan as well, because the Colts could have said, hey, we were super close. And even though the Colts have a lot of players that are of the same core, the Colts added 2 All-Pro cornerbacks this offseason. They added a Pro Bowl safety. They added a guy that's possibly going to be an All-Pro tight end and maybe an All-Pro fullback this season. Like, they added plenty of talent on top. So, like, as close as maybe they thought they were, they had to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate and actually be like, look, the guys that we're falling in love with aren't necessarily guys. And so they let go a lot of players like Ryan Kelly, which Ryan Kelly was a good player, but we see what it's looking like in Vikings. They let go of Will Fries. Stop, take the colored glasses off, and it's time to evaluate the team for what it is. And it's a team that has been picking in the top 10 most of the past decade. So really take a chance, really reevaluate the team as a whole. And that might mean having to trade some guys, maybe not Bijan or Drake London like some people are trying to be out here with, but or
Jesse Bates.
maybe you do trade Bijan and you keep Tyler Algier. Maybe it is a Jesse Bates. I don't know about AJ Terrell, but you look at the Jets, like, you think the Jets wanted to trade Sauce Gardner? You think the Jets wanted to trade Quinnen Williams? They were a team that was talented. They were a team that was a top 10, top 5 defense a couple years ago. They were a team but they realized, like, hey, even though we have talent like everybody else in the league, we have to make real changes and we have to really evaluate. So I think the Falcons have to actually do that for themselves, and things will be beneficial for them from
It has to start, and I'll leave it on this. It has to start with the GM, because there's a lot of Falcons fans out there saying, "Oh, Terry Fontenot, he killed this last draft." Da 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 da. Short-sighted decision, Sean. Like you said, he's full of them. Chris, let me take you back real quick. First thing he does, obviously, draft a tight end at 4, which, obviously wasn't the best decision in hindsight. But you also, in that same draft, you trade up, or you actually trade back in that point. But in the following 3 drafts, you trade up from your second round pick every single year, and you're giving up premium assets. In 2022, you trade up 5 spots, Chris, and you give up a 4th round pick. You know what I mean? That 4th round pick could be very beneficial to your depth right now. Same thing in 2023, you trade up 6 spots, give up a 4th round pick. And I understand that when you have conviction about players in the draft, you want to make these decisions, but that's not what your team is right now. Your team is, you need to build. You're giving up 4th round pick like it's fucking candy. 2024, you trade up from 43 to 35, and you give up a 3rd round pick. So it's
on
you
top
looking
of the
at
money, what money looks like next year with or without cuts.
On top of that, it's like this. Like Terry Fontenot does not need to be saved from this. It starts from that time. And I understand some people say, "Oh, he didn't make all decisions or whatever." His name is on it. You know what I mean?
And if he didn't make the decisions,
he
should tell you everything you need to know.
On top of all the misses that you had in the draft since you started in 2021, it has to start there. You have to get rid of Terry Fontenot. Like I said, I don't necessarily think. I know they're a package deal at this point. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Raheem stays and a different general manager comes on, but I don't think that happens. But we'll see. But Terry Fontenot needs to go. Fuck all the other shit. Terry Fontenot needs to go, and you go from there. Let the new GM. He wants to work with Raheem, cool. If not, let him pick whoever and go from there. I mean, that's how I think it should go. It is very short-sighted when you look back. It's been a lot of reflection that I've had over this past few days. Looking back at how we got here from the Matt Ryan, the end of the Thomas Dimitroff era, and Terry Fontenot is at the middle of all of it, man. Sad to say, but you trade up to get Arnold Ebiketie, you might lose him in free agency. You trade up to get Matthew Bergeron, he's been all right, but not worth 2 picks to trade up for. You trade up to get Rook, you get a 3rd round pick on top of, what I mean? So it's like, all right, bro, all right, Terry, you like to be aggressive, but that shit's stupid sometimes, and here it is.
Yep, and it's a long. I mean, they've got an opportunity, obviously, to evaluate some things. Good opportunity to look forward to how the young pass rushers develop, how all these players that everybody's saying that they hit on this year, how they develop, because, if you're going to say that they're a hit, I don't know how you say they're a hit right now at this point, but like other guys, you're not willing to say at the same time. So like it's a lot of it's this is also it's a tough, because when you're not as good, it's like you kind of have to look on different sides of things. And luckily they have some young guys that there is some upside that you can look forward to. But like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. Just gotta figure it out for next year and what next year is going to look like, and come up with not short-sighted plans. But that gives us a good segue into our hot seat. Obviously, we talked about a lot of guys that were on the hot seat for us. But who do you guys have this week, and who did you guys have last week, and why you got them on the hot seat this week?
All right, last week, I had coaches on the hot seat, basically telling them like, man up, be the coach you're supposed to be. Don't worry about outside noise or whatnot. So I mean, that's still go true for all these coaches out here. But this week I have the Buccaneers on the hot seat. And I mean, they played a good game last week. It was a good, hard fought game. Obviously, it came up short, but the reason why I got them on a hot seat, because they're at a pivotal point of the season. In the NFC currently, right now, as it stands, especially for the NFC South, the only way that any one of them can get in the playoffs is by winning the division. The Panthers is on their ass right now. They is on their ass, and they have 4 divisional games, obviously 2 against the Panthers left, and they have a tough game this week. They can't really afford too much loss. As I mean, the Panthers, they have had an up and down season, but they have some bright spots of this season. So I need I need Todd Bowles defenses. They need to step up a little bit, because at this point Baker, he's doing a lot. He's making plays out there, and obviously he's still missing plenty of weapons. Cass can attest to that. Missing a running back basically all year. Obviously their best receiver, their top receiver, Mike Evans, is gone, and who knows about Godwin. Baker needs some help, man, and that defense need to show up and show out. And if y'all want to make the playoffs, make some noise, you have to win these games. Like I said, tough game this week against the Rams, and then you got a whole bunch of divisional games. So I got the Bucs on the hot seat. Looking for them to make some noise this weekend, try to make some amends.
I like it. It's very similar to who I have in my hot seat. I'm also in the NFC South. But last week I had Raheem Morris on the hot seat, and they had a chance to win that game and did not win that game in overtime. Honestly, at this point, it is what it is. So I don't think his job, like last week, I was saying that he was in jeopardy of getting fired if that game went the wrong way. But at this point, I think you wait to the end of the season to make any kind of decision. With the injury to your quarterback, with all the other injuries to Drake, it is walking corpse maybe, but we'll see. But this week though, and I talked about him. I think I talked about him last week or the week before, and how they blew the opportunity. And then this week against the Falcons, Bryce comes out and has his career game, 448 yards, tore that defense up. They're back in that opportunity because the Buccaneers lost to the Bills. This week, I got to have Bryce Young on my hot seat. I got to. You can't be a Falcons merchant. So that's what they're calling. That's what they're calling you. You can't just be a Falcons merchant. You have to show this growth that you show in this game this past Sunday against other teams. And you're in the situation now, Chris. Like you said, the Panthers are on the Bucs' ass. And these are 2 big games. They're both going against the NFC West this weekend. You're going against the 49ers on prime time. This is Monday night. Standalone. Everybody's watching you, Bryce. If you want to be taken serious for real, because it's been a roller coaster. Let's just call it what it is. It's been a roller coaster the first 2.5 years for you. Up and down. Up until 2 weeks ago, people were saying, no, we need a new quarterback. And then last week, you flipped it. Another way to keep that shit going is to have a great performance on the road, which has been tough for you, outside of last week, against a 49ers defense that just gave up how many completions to Jacoby? 47 completions for 450 yards. So it could be done. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you need to go out and have another 448-yard passing Bryce game, but you do have to have more than 130, like you've been averaging for most of this season. You have to, and if you win this game, that's even cherry on top of that. You have a big chance right now, Bryce. So you're in the hot seat. If you want to sustain this career that you have, because they got to make a decision this offseason regardless. If you want to sustain this career that you have, you got to show up at these moments. So a lot of eyes will be on you, Bryce Young. See what you do. You're on the hot seat.
It's a good one, and it seems like we were all kind of in the same wavelength because those were, well, actually Baker and Bryce were the two guys that I initially had we're going to have on my hot seat. Well, Bryce, then Baker was my number 2, but I had just had a feeling that you guys were going to go that way. But last week, I also, I guess, and this is kind of a couple weeks now that it's been like this, but I had 2 hot seats technically because a couple weeks back I had Dak Prescott. And obviously Dak had a really good game on Monday Night Football, but during my hot seat I said, hey, Dak, look, it doesn't really matter about what you do against the Raiders because they are the Raiders. We'll talk about what it looks we might get into it just here in a second when they go against their division rival in the Eagles. But this is really where Dak's hot seat starts. And lo and behold, I also had an Eagle on my hot seat last week with Nick Sirianni more so in terms of his legacy play and where he could start to kind of place himself. And that's going to be more so of a full length over the next few weeks as opposed to just last week. But obviously getting a win against Detroit after Detroit has said that was their biggest game, they've been looking forward to for a couple years. That's a huge win for them, even fuck the style points. And then one of the things that I loved in his press conference was he kind of said like, hey, this team just understands how to win. And that's something that we've given credit to other teams about, but maybe not necessarily giving the Eagles credit for. And I think all of them deserve credit, top to bottom, quarterback, GM, head coach, whatnot. So I'm also sticking in the NFC South here. And I got Cass on the hot seat. No, I'm just fucking. But I'm sticking in the South, but I am actually going to the AFC South here. And you guys can probably figure where I'm going here, but Sauce Gardner, you are on the hot seat, not necessarily because of, what you've done, but you were brought in for this week. This week, especially, and I talked about it with how things transpired with last week's game with the Kansas City Chiefs going against the Denver Broncos when Sauce was originally traded for with the Colts. And I talked about this not only with the Colts, but with obviously everybody in the AFC West. Talked about this with the Bills, talked about this with the Ravens. But you're at a point right now where the Kansas City Chiefs are on the ropes, and this is legitimately on the ropes. Sauce Gardner was traded, like whatever questions people wanted to have about the Colts trade. And like I said, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of it, but it could be justified by getting a win this week and keeping Kansas City out of the playoffs. And I truly believe, as Chris mentioned, if they don't win this week against Indianapolis, it's over. Like the Chiefs are going to go on a 5-game win streak. It's not that. It's not going to happen. And I said that a couple weeks ago. If they were to lose to the Broncos or the Colts or any of these teams, they're not that team that's just going to just start rattling off wins. But Sauce, not only were you brought in for this specific reason for this week, obviously the playoffs were the bigger picture here, but there's been a lot of questions people have had about Sauce, like calling you Ahmad Gardner as opposed to Sauce, saying that you don't necessarily deserve that nickname, saying that you haven't been all-pro level. Some people said that you may not have deserved it when you got it the first 2 years. Some people will say that you're a pass interference merchant, you're a holder, whatever the case may be. This is the week. The Kansas City Chiefs struggle. Everybody's probably seen the stats by now. Kansas City struggles, or Patrick Mahomes specifically struggles against man coverage, which is what the Colts brought you in for. They brought you in because Lou Anarumo wants to be able to, when the going gets tough on third down, on fourth down, they want to be able to have the ability to play man in those big downs, third and long, whether it be third and long, fourth and long, second and long, whatever the case may be. This is an opportunity. The Colts are probably going to get Shadur Ward back, and now you have an opportunity where you have two quote unquote first or two all pros, two guys that could be cornerback one for any team basically. This is the opportunity. This is an opportunity. It's not going to be a primetime game. It's going to be a 1:00 game, but all eyes are going to be on this game. I said it a few weeks ago. It's the biggest game of a lot of guys on Indianapolis' career. Daniel Jones for one, Sauce Gardner for two, and it's one of the biggest games that Patrick Mahomes has had. Even though obviously he's been to Super Bowls and stuff like that. Given the situation that they're in right now, there's going to be a lot of questions about Patrick Mahomes as well following this game if they end up losing to Indianapolis and he doesn't have a good game. Sauce, you can aid in that. And also, if you do have a good game, the conversation is no longer going to be Ahmad Gardner. It's going to start being about Sauce and how the Colts made a decent trade or whatever the case may be. So I got Sauce Gardner on the hot seat this week. It's a huge week, biggest game of his career, and one of the biggest, most important games of the NFL season this season. So I got Sauce on the hot seat this week, and we'll see what he does.
Fuck with it.
Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the game picks for the week. What was last week looking like? And we'll go ahead and get started with Thursday night.
Decent week for us last week. Of course, all of us picked New England. That was a no-brainer last Thursday night, that game against the Jets. But you two stayed chalk on every other game, and I pretty much went different on every other game after that. So big things where I picked Washington, y'all picked Miami. I picked Tampa Bay, y'all picked Buffalo. It was looking rough. But then Seattle lost to the Rams, who I picked. Kansas City lost to Denver, who I picked. Then last difference was I picked Detroit, y'all picked Philly. So y'all two had 4 wins last week. I had 3 out of the 6. On the season total, I'm at 31. Chris, you were at 40. Shy, you at 37. Still a few weeks left.
So
it is interesting.
Well, before we get into the picks, do you guys want to do the Eagles-Dallas game, or do you want to do who Pittsburgh play?
Chicago.
Let's we do it fair.
Yeah, lead that one out. Yeah.
All right. Starting with the Thursday night game, we've got Buffalo at Houston. Houston has been missing their starting quarterback for 3 weeks, and not something that anybody has been talking about much, but they have kind of quelled the conversations with winning back-to-back games. So obviously Davis Mills will be starting going against Josh Allen in Houston. Who you guys got this week on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, I mean Davis Mills, man. Nah, just playing. I mean, it's gonna be a good game in my opinion. It's gonna be one. I mean, that's how Houston has been winning these games. They've been trying to keep it a little low scoring. I think Buffalo realized the situation. Like they need to, keep up. They even attempt to try to get the division back. Not saying they will, but they need to keep up, and so they need this game. In my opinion, they seem like the more desperate team. I'm just hoping that, Josh, like I said, it's going to be a close, probably low-scoring game. Just hoping Josh Allen will try to be Superman and do something crazy. But I got the Buffalo Bills winning this one. I think Josh Allen will make enough plays to make a difference in the game. So I got the dub.
Yeah, I got to go Buffalo as well. I know, Davis Mills has been, he's been winning. It hasn't been pretty. In this game, I just think the Josh is too good. I understand that Houston's defense has been stepping up, especially late these last 2 games for them. But I think they're still going to be able to score the Buffalo Bills, and I don't think Davis Mills will be able to keep up. They have been getting a little lucky with the schedule that they've had and CJ being now. Like, you go against the Titans last week, and it's like, okay, it's not super hard to win that game. So I got Josh Allen in the Buffalo Bills. I wish it would be a good game, but I think they kind of make quick work of them and get to their extended break pretty quickly by the third quarter.
Yeah, and ultimately, before I get into the game, going back to last week's game with against Tennessee, we talked a lot about quarterbacks this season, and not to say that he had a bad game, but your first overall draft pick quarterback losing against Davis Mills in a close game. Obviously, he was able to drive them down late in the end, and Davis Mills ended up being able to complete the game in the end. But coming off the bye week, obviously there were some injuries to the number one receiver, Cam Ward. We've talked about just about every other quarterback over the past 2 seasons that have been drafted with not a lot of conversations about him. Like I said when I had Michael Penix on my hot seat was, hey, you see it early. Like it doesn't happen. Like it's not 10 games and 11 games and you start. Like you see, it's after like game 3, 4, 5 that you start to see some consistency. So I'm not writing him off, but that was a tough loss in my opinion. But getting back to the Thursday night game, I'm also going Buffalo in this one in a very, very close game. And the reason that I say it's a close game, Josh Allen had his worst game of the season last year against Houston. If everybody remembers, it was the game. What do you have? Like 7 completions, 8 completions overall. It was the Stephon Diggs revenge game. But also, I think it kind of shows. I think D'Amico, similar to, and this is probably something I should have taken into consideration because I don't think that I picked the Falcons over the Buffalo Bills when they played earlier this season. But immediately after we taped it, I was like, Jeff Ulbrich kind of has he has Josh Allen's number. D'Amico Ryan's also a guy that has Josh Allen's number. So this is why I'm saying it's going to be close. Or I might have went the other way if CJ was playing. But Davis Mills, even though he's kind of kept the offense, like it's kind of looked basically the same it has with CJ Stroud, except some of their top guys are getting a little bit more opportunities. I'm going to go with Buffalo in this one, especially after Josh went nuclear last week. I think they kind of have started to find a little something offensively without trying to fit the Keon Coleman piece into the puzzle. So we shall see, but I'm going with Buffalo in this one. And hopefully, hey, if they don't, it's a lot of questions that's going to start happening. But obviously a game that I've talked about a lot over the past few weeks and just talked about a little bit before. We've got Indianapolis visiting Kansas City. Indianapolis obviously coming off of a bye week, and Kansas City coming off of a very, very tough loss against their division rival. Who you guys got this week?
Yeah, man. Game of the week by name, not by players, because the Chiefs. Look, I got the Colts in this one. Most like how you said, they brought over Sauce Gardner. I mean, I look at it, they brought over Lou just for this, because Lou has had Patrick Mahomes' number, even with the L's that the Bengals have taken to Patrick Mahomes. It's always been a tough end of the game type of penalty that cost the Bengals and ultimately at the end. And I mean, we could be honest. The Colts have better personnel defensively than the Bengals did, in my opinion, especially on the back end. Especially on the back 7 in general. So I think it's gonna be another tough game for Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think they have enough, and I think ultimately the Colts will come out with the W. So I got the Colts.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one because Kansas City knows how important this game is. But again, they knew how important most of these games were so far. They played this season, and they still haven't found a way to win them. I got to go Indianapolis in this one. Coming out the bye week, preparing for this matchup, knowing that if you win this, first off, this is still a very important game because at the top of that AFC for Indianapolis is right there. They're right there. You still got to compete with the Patriots and the Broncos to try to get that number 1 seed. So it's a very important game for both teams, just for different reasons. But I got to go Indianapolis. They understand also how important this game will be going into this back stretch of their schedule, which, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how that ends up. But divisional games and all that, we'll see. But I got Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I obviously I'm going with the Colts as well. I was a little bit more confident before I saw them lose to the Broncos. I'm not gonna lie, but obviously, like I said, this is everything that they've been gearing up for. Given how the season has gone, this is the game that not to say that as a fan, all of us as a fan, we when we watch the national news TV shows, we want to see our teams get credit. We want to see our teams talked about in nice light and stuff like that. And Indianapolis has not really been talked about really at all. And honestly, we all say that we want that as fans, but we really don't want you to talk about our teams because we're like, you really don't know that much.
Fly under that radar real quick.
Let's fly under the radar. But this is the game that I think that they really need, honestly, for all of them, because I think it's the biggest game of Daniel Jones' career, even though he's played in the playoffs before. I think it's the biggest game of basically all of the Colts stars, maybe outside of DeForest Buckner, obviously, and maybe Shavar Ward as well. But Sauce hasn't played in a playoff game, really hasn't played in any big games. Jonathan Taylor has played in one playoff game, really hasn't played in many big games outside of that. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, all these guys. So this is everything that the Colts have built for. Chris Ballard came from Kansas City. He's, been building a team to face Kansas City his whole time. So this is an opportunity for Daniel Jones, for Sauce Gardner, for Jonathan Taylor. All those guys could have been on the hot seat, really, ultimately. But I think with Shavar Ward coming back this week, and it seems like a lot of the Colts guys are ultimately healthy outside of DeForest Buckner, this is a big game for them. And so I'm rocking with them as well. And going to have a lot of questions about Kansas City next week, if so. And maybe a lot of questions about Indianapolis if they lose as well. So now this is a game that's a little bit iffy because we got some news today, and this is one I'm throwing in right on the fly here. We got some news today that he was a full participant. We talked a little bit about him last week, but and we didn't talk too much about Spitgate, but it probably doesn't necessarily need to be talked about at all. But the New England Patriots are playing the Cincinnati Bengals this week, and Joe Burrow was officially a full participant in practice. So when you start seeing full participant, we don't typically see guys sit after that, especially if he's a full participant all week. So Cincinnati, obviously, they feel like they have an opportunity, and the Patriots are right now in a pole position to fight, continue fighting for the first seed in the AFC. Who you guys got this week and why?
I'm gonna roll with the Patriots, simply because I just think that they have a good defense. Let's start there. They have a good defense, and without Jamar Chase, I mean T. Higgins is a dog. And this is Joe Burrow's first game back. I just can't see him. I'm not gonna just act like he is gonna come back after months of not playing and just light it up. But they don't have a good defense, and I think the Patriots will do enough to win the game. Now, I still think it will be a close game because you still got to factor in Joe Burrow. But I just think right now Patriots are in such a groove that a quarterback coming off an injury like that, sometimes you don't come out swinging like you should. So I'm gonna roll with the Patriots on this.
I like how locked in the Patriots are. Not surprising at all with their coach being Mike Vrabel. He was on a radio show after their win on Friday and talked about, or at some point he was on a radio show. I think it was on that win after Friday, and talked about how a lot of people will still be in the building throughout the weekend, even though they were off. That team has great vibes right now. It's tough to pick against them at this point. Again, coming off of that mini bye, they are still the more rested team that's playing better. I know reports came out that Stephon Diggs had playing through a broken finger, but May and Josh, by extension, Daniels is having success with receivers that have been cast away. And going against this Cincinnati team, I just really like what they have going on. I don't think it stops here against this defense. So I got to go New England, even though it's on the road. See what happens.
Very tough one on the road, and I'm actually going to go with Cincinnati if Joe Burrow plays. I just think New England is, they're not going to win out.
They itching for a loss. They're
due.
They're
due. They probably should have lost to the Falcons. Obviously, they kind of got outplayed a little bit in that game. They were obviously, like Chris mentioned, in a tough battle with the Jets this past week. They got outplayed technically by the Bucs as well, but I don't want to say got outplayed, but they lost. The Bucs lost the explosive battle, whereas they were more consistent on down to down. Patriots got all, but Patriots weren't necessarily consistent on down to down, but got a lot of explosive plays. Obviously, 3 that went for long touchdowns. So I think they are due. But obviously, if Joe Burrow doesn't play, kind of like what you guys are saying, they are on a roll. They do have a guy that's playing, close to an MVP level. They might have found some. Well, I'm not going to say they found really much with Travion Henderson, because I don't think that he's going to be able to continue to break out long runs, but when you're playing against a Jets team that is not that great, you can get 4 touchdowns or whatever he had.
That was crazy.
So I'm going to rock with the Patriots if Joe Burrow doesn't play. But if he does, I think he plays Superman for a game before we see kind of the downfall of the Eagles. But anyway,
that would be on track for Joe Burrow. Come back for his first game. Get everybody talking about him again. It's like,
and then they just start losing.
And
there's not been a lot of talk about Trey Hendrickson. Is he kind of doing like a mini holdout? Because it seemed like they was close a few weeks ago, and now it's just like he's not even. The first day they're talking about he's out. Like there's no chance. So, we'll see. But maybe just the injury's not responding, getting older. Maybe that's why they didn't want to pay him. Hey, who knows? Getting into the next game, big divisional game. Obviously, one of the biggest rivalries in the league. We got Chris's Eagles going against the Dallas Cowboys. Who you guys got this week and why?
Well, clearly I'm rolling with the Eagles, but this is going to be a tough game. Like you said, Shy. I mean, as long as I can remember, in general, like we always split with them, especially when Dak Prescott is playing. He's a good quarterback, so a lot of times we'll win at home and then they'll win at home. This is an important game for both teams. Obviously, the word in Dallas, they went out. They could possibly sneak in there, but again, like I mentioned earlier, it's such a log jam from 1 to 8 in general for the NFC playoff that you can't afford to slip up. You just can't afford it if you, especially with the record that Dallas had. If they want to, with the Eagles on the other hand, not saying we could afford a loss. I mean, we kind of can. We will still be the 2 seed, and we still will own the tiebreakers with pretty much every team that's in the top echelon of NFC. And then if we play the Bears on Friday and we beat them, we will own the tiebreaker again. So we own them pretty much all the tiebreakers we need. But I would love for obviously our offense to get better, to get right. I love how our defense played, but just like it's interesting, obviously it looked bad, but at the same time, both teams that we just played, the offense looked terrible. One thing that people wasn't really mentioning, at least this past game, was they were playing in a game where it was like 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, and they said that shit was swirling there. So I can imagine, Jared Goff, he's one of the few quarterbacks that is very, very accurate, and some of the passes that even when he wasn't under pressure, it was just off target. So I'm gonna just chalk that up to that, and I believe our offense will look just a little bit better. Not obviously still no consistency with that, but I think we will. I think we could pull this game out, and like I said, even we don't. It's not a hindrance to our season. It's not gonna kill us. I mean, obviously bragging rights with the divisional opponent or whatever, but it's not gonna kill us. So, but I still got the Eagles winning.
I think this will be a tough one. Like you said, Chris, with all like how windy that game was, I was expecting a little bit more out of Saquon, and he brought that out of us. With the season he had last year, it's tough because he's only averaging 3.8 yards per carry so far, which is second lowest of his career, third lowest of his career. This would be a game that you could see him break out, but I don't want to say you shouldn't expect it. But it's been tough sledding this season, and I think that kind of rears his head a little bit. Not all the way out. I'm not out on Saquon at all, but I just think this is, like you said, Chris, you can't afford to lose this, and I got Dallas in this one. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm not confident in it. But but I can see Dallas fucking around and winning this. I honestly can. George Pickens, ball, like hell of a game last week. We didn't talk too much about that performance that he had, 144 yards. Did whatever he wanted to do out there. I understand that it's the Raiders, but did whatever he wanted to do out there. So I think that does present matchups when you have both him and CD clicking how they are. I think they can pull this out, Dallas. So I got Dallas.